So we're going to go ahead and kick off this section by learning about what HTML5 is, and then I'm going to show you how it's used everywhere, all over the internet. It's going to blow your mind how all this stuff works. So first thing is, if we want to learn something new, I think there's no better place to look than Wikipedia. So I have the HTML entry here loaded up, and this just kind of gives you some basic information. You see HTML stands for Hypertext Markup Language. Never refer to it as that. That is a bunch of garbage. Everyone just knows it as HTML. And HTML is, as it said here, a markup language. I wouldn't refer to it as a programming language like you might hear about Java, JavaScript, Python, Swift, Ruby, those programming languages. It's more kind of a format for a file, and you're going to see that as we sort of walk through this here. The next thing that I want to address is I've always referred to it as HTML5 that we're learning. And you may be thinking, is there HTML4, 3, 2? What's that all about? And if you look through the history here, there's been multiple versions of HTML. So 2.0 came out in 1995. Then, came version 3 in 97. You can kind of see these, but something I do want to point out. The last version to come out was HTML 4.01 in about 99 and 2000. And then the next version, HTML5, did not come out until 2014. So that was like a 14-year stretch where it was like, you know what we've got right now, it's working, it's okay. So if you're wondering, okay, what's the big differences between these different versions? Well, there's, some new things that have been added. They've gotten rid of other things as these different versions have come. But the big thing is that most HTML code out there, this language, it works for almost every single version. Now, stuff that maybe came out in 2.0 versus 5, that's going to be pretty different. But if we're talking about stuff that worked on version 4.0 and version 5, like those are going to be almost the same. Like I said, there's some new stuff in 5, but you don't have to get all uptight and oh, is this HTML5? Is this HTML4? Like no, just it's all just HTML, and every major browser out there is supporting HTML5. Okay, so now I want to talk about what HTML is. You're probably still thinking like, I really don't get what it is. And it's basically this reference, and it's these rules saying, okay, if you make a file that follows these certain things, a web browser should display it in this certain way. So it's kind of this contract between someone who wants to create a website and then the browser that's going to display that page. So I think the best way to do this is look at just a very simple HTML file. So let's go ahead and open up brackets. That was our text editor. So I'm going to go to my applications and open that up. And when we opened it up for the first time, there was sort of this example project there for us. And the code here is a little bit small, so I'm going to go ahead and make this bigger. So if you can get to your brackets preferences, this is how you get to it in Mac. You might see it somewhere else if you're in a different operating system, but this is where you can make some changes. For example, what size the font should be and stuff like that. And for example, here the font size right now is 12. I might want to change this to something like 24. I'm going to hit save on that, and then boom, all of a sudden this code's a lot bigger. So I think this is pretty readable. I'm going to leave this here. If I hit this little X, then it's going to get rid of that, and I can come back here to this HTML. Oh, and I want to get rid of this split screen, so I'm going to hit this little X up here at the top. Okay. So this was sort of the example HTML file that they gave us, and you can see it's just text inside of an HTML file. And basically the idea here is that you put these tags around text and things like that, and it basically is this file that a web browser knows how to display properly. So, this code that looks like this right now, there's just all these slashes and, greater than or less than signs, doesn't look all that great. But when you look at this in a web browser, like if I hit this little lightning bolt here, it's going to pull it up in Chrome. It looks a whole lot prettier, okay? And so the whole idea is that HTML is sort of this contract that, if you write your code in a certain way, we're going to display it in a web browser in a certain way. And so, it's basically taking this stuff, which is sort of meant for the browser, the computer, and making it into a cool visual experience. So here that, an actual person who's looking at this through a web browser can be like, oh, that's kind of cool. Like, I understand what's going on here. So to kind of show you how HTML is used everywhere, like seriously, this is going to blow your mind. every website that you've gone to is powered by HTML. It's just one of these HTML files with a bunch of these tags inside of there and stuff. So if you want to see this, for example, on this Wikipedia page even that I'm looking at for HTML, we're getting really meta here. If you go up to View and then under Developer, do View Source, this will show you the HTML behind that web page. So for example, this is all the code behind showing this Wikipedia page. And I mean, if you kind of scroll through here, you can sort of see some familiar stuff, like, you know, here it's talking about the different versions. Oh, there's 2.0. Then as we scroll through, there's version 4.0, whatever. Like, you can kind of see, okay, this, I could see how these two things are connected, but every website is powered by HTML when you get down to it. Now, obviously these two things don't look similar, but this is like the instructions to the browser to say this is how you should present this. And so there's all sorts of information about here about show this specific picture, make text this color, make the background that color, and things like that. So I want to just do this for a couple more websites so you can see everything has a source. So if we go to, for example, let's go to google.com. You got to spell google.com correctly to get there. But if we do View Developer Source, just like this, you can see this is the code behind Google. Now, you'd be surprised, like, this looks like such a simple web page, but holy cow, there's like all this, you know, code behind it. Let's do another one like apple.com, for example. Okay, so let's do View Developer View Source. Again, this is all the code behind it. Now, something that's really awesome is since a website is basically just showing this file, right, which is all this text, and it's, you know, sort of sorted out in a certain special position. That's what HTML is, and we're going to be learning this as we go. But you can actually change this on your browser. So if you've ever wanted to prank someone, like change their Facebook status or whatnot, I'm going to show you how you can do that real quick and just show you that, you know, HTML at the end of the day is just this sort of text file almost that you can manipulate however you want. So let's go ahead and go to a new website. Let's go to the New York Times website, and I'm going to do New York Times here, and I'm going to go ahead, I should have known this domain, nytimes.com, that makes sense. And I'm just going to show you how you can change things on a page if you want to. So in Chrome, you can see the HTML behind a page by doing that View Source, but you can also just right-click anywhere and do View, or not View Page Source, you want to do Inspect. And if you click on this, this little, you know, thing comes up from the bottom. I call it the developer wedgie, but it basically shows the HTML code behind this website. And we can, you know, scroll down through here. You might have to hit some arrows to kind of get more in depth into stuff. But you can click this little button here, which will let you sort of click on anything in the page and it will show you the code behind it. So let's say I want to change maybe the top headline here. So if I go ahead and click on this, it shows me, oh, this is the line of code that is, you know, making this display here. And I can actually change the text inside of here. So if I double click inside of here and I want it to say now something like, Nick is a very cool dude, okay, and I click out of this, look at that! All of a sudden now on the New York Times, it looks like, Nick is a very cool dude. And the reason that this works is all that is happening here is when we go to newyorktimes.com, we're basically saying, send us your HTML file for newyorktimes.com. So the New York Times, they have, you know, a web server somewhere that says, okay, I've got to go get all the top headlines and stuff, and they format it into this perfect HTML file that's current for this very moment, and they send that back to our browser, and then our browser makes this show up. And so it is actually looking at this HTML file, and we can change that file if we want to. Now, just because I changed this to say Nick is a very cool dude does not mean this happens for anybody else in the world. It's just currently for what I have now. In fact, if I go ahead and reload this page, it's going to bring back the real title that was there before. But, you know, since I have my own version now, I've gone to New York Times, I said, give me your HTML file, I can change something else. So, for instance, let's see if I can even change the New York Times title. It might be an image, but let's see. I'm going to double click where it says New York Times, and I'm going to change it to the Nick Rick Times or something like that. Yeah, I don't think that worked because I think that's probably an image. So let's go ahead and try and change something else. Let's change maybe like this little chunk of code inside of here. Okay, so I'm going to double click and just say, I like cheese very much, or something like that. And all of a sudden, look, I like cheese very much. So I kind of want to give you a challenge real quick, is maybe, you know, pull a prank on your friend or whatever, show some like Twitter update from the president, or go to your friend's Facebook and change one of their status updates. Do this inspect thing to go change some code inside of there. And that'll just kind of be a fun thing. Remember when I said being curious is really going to help you learn in this class? Go ahead and take a moment, go to one of your favorite websites and try changing some of the text on there. I think that'll be pretty fun.